As-salaamu alaykum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Islamic life maximizers. Jazakumullahu khair for tuning in to another episode of Maximized Islamic Life TV, your source to Islamically maximize every single area of your life in this dunya and in the akhirah for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the show, the episode where I bring to you some individuals that have various knowledges and experiences to be able to share with you guys. And alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, I'm very, very excited to speak here with my brother Abu Zubayr. And we're going to be talking about a lot of, accepting Islam, aqidah, the Qur'an and the Sunnah, as well as Tawheed, which is very important, and the challenges that individuals face when they're accepting Islam, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, or after they accept Islam. So, inshallah, without further ado, I'm going to have our brother Abu Zubayr introduce himself, and then we'll just kind of have this conversation and continue, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khair.
So basically, my real name is Zachary David Simpson. I grew up here in Utah, and I started my life as a Mormon, basically. We went to church every Sunday, and my mom was the real catalyst behind that.
Mm-hmm.
My dad kind of accepted it half-heartedly because he was trying to follow her, and he kind of had a different attitude than they did from the beginning, so basically he got himself into a lot of trouble. He made jokes they didn't like, things like that,
Yeah. So they were, apologize for cutting in, your family were not Mormon to begin with?
My mom grew up as Mormon, but my dad, he accepted it after meeting my mom.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so basically he was a convert for my mom, I would say,
mm-hmm.
and hopefully I don't offend my mom by saying that.
Yeah.
but he stopped going after a while,
mm-hmm.
and I really didn't like it from the beginning, so I stopped going with him.
Okay.
And so I spent, let's say, from the time I was 8 years old
mm-hmm.
until I was about 13, just kind of playing and being a normal kid, But by the time I became 13, I got into music, so I started with my journey on becoming a guitar player, basically.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I was a professional musician, but I did play like every day. I played in bands, and I didn't make a lot of money, but I did commit 11 years of my life to nothing but music. So really, for me, accepting Islam was it wasn't something I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't looking to be part of any religion.
Yeah.
And it was not a choice that I was actively seeking for.
Yeah.
But the thing that really got me interested was I took a class at the community college on mythologies and religions.
Okay.
And it talked a lot about, like every religion was talked about in that class, like Buddhism, everything.
Yeah.
And then I went to the library after that because I was looking for a way to improve my concentration
mm-hmm.
in playing guitar. And I found a book, I think it was called Motorcycle Maintenance or something like that, about Zen, so how to do meditation in Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it. I liked the things that they were talking about. It actually helped me improve my concentration a little bit.
Yeah.
But then before that, I had met a Muslim at one of my jobs. I was working on Apollo Burgers at that time.
Yeah.
And he was Pakistani, and he told me what Shahada meant. And
Mm-hmm.
he prayed in front of me a couple times.
Yeah.
And so 5 years later, that was when I was getting into this searching with the religion stuff.
Okay.
So that's when I checked out the book on Buddhism. Then after that, I immediately decided, let me check out something on Islam.
Yeah.
So I checked out a book which was called Islam the Natural Way.
Okay.
So it's by Abdul Wahid Hamid. So if anyone wants to check it out, it's a really nice book.
MashaAllah.
I still have it in my library, and I read it every once in a while.
MashaAllah.
And
MashaAllah.
I just loved it so much. I finished it in like a couple of days, you know.
Yeah.
And then I decided, let me just go accept Islam. I just jumped into it, you know. So
What was the trigger point?
I just reading that book, and the main thing that struck me about it was that all my life I believed there's one God. And I never believed there's more than one God.
Okay.
But the thing about the way he described it, I was looking for proof that there would be some kind of connection between me and God. You know, like how do I get to God? And even sometimes I would play guitar and I'd be like, well, I'm going to do this for God, you know?
Yeah.
So it became kind of like a innovative form of worship for me, you know?
So
The thing about it is, what was I saying? Like basically, the thing about the way he described God in there
yeah.
is that there is proof for God. So it's around you everywhere. Like basically, he gave the story of a camel. That when you see the footsteps in the sand in the desert, you know that a camel was there.
Yeah.
So I started thinking, well, that makes sense because everything around me is pointing to a system.
Right.
You know, so there has to be a God that I can worship through that. But I just didn't know how to worship him. But then when I saw the character of the Prophet ﷺ in that book as well, the main thing that I loved about him was the way they treated his wives. You know, so like the story of Aisha, when they were in the desert, he told his companions to go forward so that they couldn't see her.
Yeah.
And basically what they did is they had a race in the desert. And Aisha won. So that was like, I just love that story so much, you know. And then later on they had another one, and Rasulullah won.
Yeah.
After she gained some weight. But that was like the main thing that I loved about him. His honesty, all his other dealings were
great quality.
Yeah, he had every quality.
SubhanAllah.
But the main thing that struck me was the way he was with women, you know. So yeah.
No, I mean I was just reflecting on that because I thought like, because the way Islam is being portrayed on, well, I guess there's a difference, right? Where there's the way it's being portrayed versus the way we should be portrayed and the way we actually are, right? So
yeah,
I mean, can't blame
the people who hate something.
Yeah.
You're gonna find a way to talk bad about it, you know. So if you have a preconceived notion about it, you're not gonna be interested in finding the truth. You're gonna be like trying to find a way to make it look bad. Yeah. So a lot of times the media portrays it like Islam is just nothing but terrorism. Yeah. You know, and these people that commit those acts, they're not real Muslims. They're misinformed about what Islam tells about things like that, or they have a desire in their heart to commit those things, and they're basically have an evil heart. You know what I mean? Yeah. So those kind of teachings are not present in Islam. So when you're trying to make Islam look bad, you'll find any way. So they found this thing that just keep repeating over and over that Islam means terrorism. Yeah. And fundamentalism means terrorism, you know, but in reality, fundamentalism is a good thing. Right. Because, you know, just to give a worldly example, to be a basketball player, you have to know fundamentals.
I was actually thinking about that.
So,
that's exactly the example that I use in my head whenever I'm thinking about that.
If you're not following the fundamentals, then how are you going to follow the extra things?
Right,
you know?
right.
So that to me is like a big misnomer about Islam.
Yeah.
You know?
The whole like giving titles to certain things that are not really bad, but making them seem bad.
Yeah, so I mean, the people who wanted to worship idols in the Prophet's time, they had to come up with something that would show that this Qur'an is not a true book from Allah. Right. So they said he's a sahir, he's a magician, he's a kadhab, he's a liar. Yeah. Even though before that they were calling him Ameen, the trustworthy. You know, so they called him a magician, a poet. They called him a liar. They called him kahin, which is like a soothsayer, you know, someone who knows the information from the stars, you know, and the jinn. Yeah. But none of those titles fit him, and they just could not explain how he was coming up with these perfect words that nobody could find a contradiction in, you know. So if they're gonna do something like that, they're gonna have to find a title for you and try and apply it somehow. And they come up with the terrorism thing, they come up with the jihadi thing, you know, and all kinds of modern things. And they say women are backwards in Islam, you know, like they cover their heads, it means they cover their brains, you know, and things like this. And but the reality is that women in Islam, most of, if not 90%, I would say, choose the hijab.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people nowadays, and they choose to pray 5 times a day. They choose this stuff because they don't have to in reality, you know, because the way, like in America, for example, the way it's set up, you could do whatever you want. Nobody would say anything.
Right.
Even in Arab countries nowadays, it's like, it's become like a kind of an odd thing for you to follow the religion. So if they didn't want to pray, they don't have to.
Right.
You know,
Right.
if they didn't want to cover their hair, a lot of times they don't have to.
Right.
Unless you're in a country where the law is that you have to follow it, like Saudi Arabia, for example.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure most of those women don't really have a problem with it once they get used to it, you know.
Right, and it's a part of the culture as well there.
Yeah.
So I think it's more like there's certain people that want it, certain people who resist it, but like you said, depending on where they are, it's like it's either part of the norm or not.
Yeah, and it's like following these things actually give you benefit, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, because Allah sent down what makes the hearts tranquil. You know, so when you follow these things, you find peace in your heart.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't follow those things, you have like a tightness in your heart.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I could definitely feel that before I was Muslim.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, because before I was Muslim, you just feel depressed all the time. Like
you
feel like what's gonna make me more happy, you know? So you try and find things in the dunya to make you happy because you don't know how to turn to Allah. So for example, for the guitar thing, I was just always thinking, if I get that perfect setup, you know, I have the right amplifier and I have the right guitar and the right machines going around, then I'm gonna be the best guitar player and I'll be happy, you know. But it doesn't work. Every time you get one of those things, you feel good for a few minutes, but then you get depressed again. You know, so I just really feel bad that for those 11 years I had no idea how to know anything about Allah. When I was a kid, it was different, you know, because when you're a kid, you don't really know anything about right or wrong. You just kind of do whatever.
You have the fitrah,
whatever's fun, you know. But when you get to be that teenage age and you start getting more in your 20s and your 30s and like that, you have to find something to make you get away from the boredom.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because going to work every day, going to school every day, it may give you some kind of joy, but eventually you get bored.
Right.
You know, and you have to find something to fill the void. And I don't know if everybody feels that, but that's the way I felt, you know. And you can't find it in the dunya. You can't find the sweetness of Iman in your heart in the dunya.
Right.
And there's a statement of some of the Salaf. They said that basically we have this feeling in our hearts that if the kings and the queens knew about it, they would fight us to get it.
Subhanallah.
You know, so connecting yourself to the Creator, that's what really gives you true happiness. And I don't know why people don't get that, you know. I mean, people, they somehow want to get to the Creator a lot of times. They believe there's a Creator that sustains me and He has control over the universe and everything. But they worship Him thinking that He's not going to be merciful enough for me to go directly to Him. They worship Him thinking that somehow I have to have something in front of me that's going to be my go-between to get to Him. You know? So that pretty much all other religions have that. You know, I mean, somehow they have some kind of intercessor or some go-between that they think is going to be holy enough that they'll be able to reach the Creator and be safe and have His mercy and all that. But the beauty about Islam is that we go directly to Him because we know that He doesn't need all that. You know,
something we take for granted.
And the thing about it is that people will say, well, why are you venerating the Prophet in such a way that you say Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam every time his name is mentioned, or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Or why do you have to dress like him? Why do you have to have a beard? Why do you have to, you know, eat with your right hand and lick your fingers when you're done? All this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is that's not venerating him in a form of worshiping him. The thing about it is you have to have an example that teaches you those fundamentals.
Right.
So when Allah chose him, he chose the person that had the best character, the best manners, and everything about him was the best. His tribe was the best. He had the best lineage. He had the best, upbringing.
Yeah.
You know, he was honorable in his society before he became the Prophet.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that they rejected him because of that. They would have to reject him on something else.
Yeah.
You know, so the main thing that they had a problem with was his tawheed, and tawheed means that you worship Allah directly.
Yeah.
You know, so Allah chose him because he was the best. He already believed in tawheed before he became the Prophet, and he already had the best manners before he became the Prophet.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing about him is he was just, everything about him was perfect for that situation. And then Allah chose him, and he started to preach, and he was like one of those, the five we say have ulul azm, which is basically that they had strong determination that nothing would stop them from their mission. So he was one of those five, and he had that before he became the Prophet. He had everything he did was successful. That's why there's a story in the Sirah about when he was a kid.
Yeah.
One of his family members, I think, had lost one of their camels. So they said, everything this guy does, he's successful.
Yeah.
So let us send him to find the camel. So
I've
eventually
never
they
heard
send
the
him.
story.
They send him, and he
Yeah.
goes and finds a camel, and he comes back with it.
Yeah. Like it was nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything he did had a wisdom in it. Everything he did had
Barakah.
success behind it, barakah, everything, you know.
Yeah.
And so
Subhanallah.
when Allah chose him, he chose him for that. So whatever he did after he became the Prophet was an example for us to follow. Like going back to the example of basketball,
Yeah.
you know, if you're going to learn a jump shot, who are you going to learn it from? You're not going to learn it from your cousin, you're going to learn from Larry Bird, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you want to learn the three-pointer, you go to Larry Bird.
Yeah.
So you have to have an example of how to do that worship.
Yeah.
So we're not worshiping him, we're worshiping Allah through his example by following what he did.
Right.
So, and also, like for example, if you have a stereo, if you run it according to the wrong instructions, it's going to blow up, you know? So, but if you run it according to the right instructions, then it works the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
So that's why Allah sent down these laws for us to follow, you know?
Subhanallah.
And you asked me before about, you know, my I don't know if I'm a good example of it. I think I'm a bad example of it, actually.
Yeah.
But you said that you admired me for following the things without picking and choosing. So to me, that's been a major tenet from the beginning of my Islam.
Yeah.
Is that, and I'm not saying that I am that way, because you know Allah knows best about me. But the thing about it is, I've tried to stick to that because I know there's a hadith that mentions the Prophet ﷺ, that everything he said that was good for us, he guided us to it. And everything that he said that Allah sent down was bad for us, he told us to stay away from it. So that hadith affected me, and I was like, you know, I'm not going to pick and choose. I'm not going to, one day I'm going to, you know, listen to music all day long, the next day I'm going to leave it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to leave it from the beginning, you know? And also the thing about it that affected me was also his Sahaba. The Sahaba, they spent 13 years in Mecca, learning nothing but Tawheed. The only command they had was at the 10th year when the Isra wal Mi'raj happened, and he got the command for Salah. So they had 3 years of Salah. But before that, they weren't doing any kind of rituals or anything. There wasn't any haram or halal in Mecca. Yeah. There wasn't any haram or halal. They were just learning about Tawheed.
Subhanallah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so that affected their hearts in such a way that when the haram and halal came down,
Yeah.
they left it immediately.
Subhanallah.
You know,
they
like-
felt obligated because all this time there wasn't anything
Yeah, and
forbidden
also their
or
iman was so
commanded.
strong
Yeah.
that even addictions, they left it right away,
Mm.
like alcohol. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And zina. So
Subhanallah.
when those things were forbidden, they left it right away. When alcohol came down, that you're supposed to leave it,
Yeah.
they spilled the alcohol on the streets, and it was like a river of alcohol going down the street. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because like when you're first coming into accepting Islam, whether it's completely from a different religion
Uh-huh.
or while it's within the religion, I think there is a turning point for whether we're all born Muslims, right?
Uh-huh.
It's on the fitrah.
Yeah.
Now, when your parents raise you as a different religion, or when you neglect the religion in itself, in either cases, there's a turning point that brings you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if everybody experiences that, because there's some people from the youth that are just completely 100%, you know, on the sunnah from the time they're a kid.
Yeah.
But most people have a period of jahiliyyah,
Yeah.
and coming from non-Muslim background, I definitely had it, you know,
Yeah.
because I had no idea what was good, what was bad. And that's what the major fitna, you know, because there's a statement of Hudayfa, I think, Ridwanullah,
Mm.
that he said that the biggest fitna for a person is that when you hear about something and you don't know whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
So
That's the fitna.
That's the major fitna.
Subhanallah.
So for me,
Subhanallah.
I could have fell into shirk, and I did fall into it before I was Muslim,
Yeah.
and it wasn't a big deal to me
Right.
because I had no idea, you know, that this is the major right of Allah. This is His most important right, you know.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I mean, I did believe there was one God, but I did things that were against that worship, you know.
Yeah.
And not only that, but you know, you fall into other sins, which, you know, we don't have to mention everything that I did, but you know,
Alhamdulillah, yeah.
you know, I mean,
Yeah.
I did that stuff. So,
Yeah.
and that happens to Muslims too, and I see it happening all the time.
Yeah.
And the major problem is that a lot of Muslims nowadays don't want to study
Hmm.
the deen.
Yeah.
They don't want to be bothered to study the deen, you know. And
Why
also,
is that, do you think?
I think the main point is they're not taught Tawheed from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not made into an important thing. So the thing about it is they don't have that iman in their hearts that's strong,
Yeah.
like the Sahaba had, that made them want to learn more.
Yeah.
You know, so being very jahil and you know, not following the commands of Allah, it's normal to them
Yeah.
because everybody around them is like that.
Right.
You know, and I'm not picking on Arabs or Pakistanis or anything like that when I say that, because it's basically every culture is like that nowadays. You know,
True.
most of the people nowadays don't want to follow the deen the way it was revealed. You know,
Yeah.
and not only that, but they have bad callers. Like
Mm.
for example, scholars that say things that are completely against the deen, but they take it as the truth.
Mm.
You know, so
Yeah.
and I'm not going to mention any names, but there's people that you know, they think that spinning around in circles is going to get you to Allah, you know, and they spin and they spin and they spin, and then eventually they get kind of euphoric feeling and they think that's iman.
Yeah.
But that's not iman. That's just
Subhanallah.
like being dizzy, basically. You
Yeah.
know? And that's
Busy
like,
and busy with the dunya.
yeah, and that's the example of basically everything is like you're spinning in circles and then you just get dizzy, but you're not finding that iman in your heart.
The true iman.
It's not going to
Yeah.
come until you follow the Tawheed and the Sunnah, you
Mhm.
know. And maybe you could do something that would be against the deen but have some kind of form of iman,
Yeah.
but it's not the iman that's going to increase, you know. Because, for example, maybe you think celebrating the birthday of the Prophet is a good thing, you know. And you're like, okay, so I'm gonna bake a cake and I'm gonna, you
Invite
know,
some people
have
and-
food and dhikr,
Yeah.
loud dhikr and everything.
Yeah.
And maybe you feel something temporary in your heart, like a
Right.
spark,
Right.
because you know maybe you feel like some kind of love for the Prophet at that time.
Yeah.
But that's not what he commanded.
So,
What he commanded is to obey him, you
Yeah.
know, and that's the true sign of love. is to obey the person that you love, you know. So when it comes to the Prophet, you know, people say it's not important for me to grow a beard, it's not important for me to, you know, have my pants over my ankles, or you know, leave behind bid'ah or whatever. But those are the things he commanded. And those things, if you do them for the right intention, they give you an increase in iman. Even though it may seem like a trivial thing to have a beard, but they give you an increase in iman when you do it for that intention.
So I actually had a question, because I see individuals who are in a delusional state where they think they're following the Prophet, but from my assessment and what I really saw them doing is they're worshiping the Prophet.
Yeah, so that's
what is, I want to understand what that is, and I want to understand, is there a line in between worshiping the Prophet and following the Prophet?
There's definitely a line, because if I get to the point, like for example, so many religions, they have that intercessor, like I mentioned. Like in Christianity, they have Jesus, and in Shia religion, they have Hussein and Zainab and all that. You know, so basically, the thing about that religion, which is mentioned in the books of Tawheed from Mohamud and Abdul Wahhab, and I know he's controversial that I'm mentioning him because he's my hero. You know, so but basically, the thing that he mentions in one of his books is that there's always that intercessor between you and Allah that becomes worshipped for those other religions. And whatever religion it is, they have that intercessor, you know? So basically, when you start placing your trust in that person, like for example, he's not even around, he's dead, for example, but you have a trust in him, that if you say, yeah, Hussein, that he's going to help you. You know, that trust is in him instead of in Allah. And the thing about that is, for example, if I go, and there's a sect called Brailwi, which is like, you know, they basically worship Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Brailwi, yeah, it's common in the Indo-Pak area.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically, I watched a YouTube debate between one of them and one of the students of knowledge from the Sunni side. And at the end, you know, everybody they think they won the debate. You know, every side says they won. You know, that's what always happens with debates. So the Sunnis were like, Allahu Akbar. You know, they say Allahu Akbar. And then the other side, the Brailwis, they go, Ya Rasulullah.
Subhanallah.
And it's like,
it became apparent who won then.
So that was like, you're done. You lost, you know? So,
Subhanallah.
And the thing about it is every religion is like that. Every religion other than the Sunni Islam.
So it's more of who are you calling on?
Yeah, and not only calling, but placing your trust in, loving to the point where you're loving them above Allah, you know, or having hope in them, or thinking that if you say one bad thing about them, they can be punished. You know, I mean, we don't say bad things about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam out of respect, but to the point where you would think that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the one who's going to give you the punishment. You know, so I mean, every religion has that, and even if you say that I'm not following any religion, you still have that, because there's a point where even if you're an atheist, you're following your desires to the point where loving them is a worship. You know, so whatever is in your heart becomes a worship for you. Even if you're an atheist and you say there's no God,
that is your God.
It's your God is your desires. You know, so basically, whatever that desire is, like, you know, if you're a musician or you're a money man or whatever, that desire becomes your God. You know,
or gambling or any of these
any of those things. I mean, zina and you know, everything. There's got to be some point where you realize that for you to change, there has to be a point for you to realize that those things don't make you happy, and they don't give you what you're seeking from them. You know, if you're seeking that your happiness is everything is in my scholarship for some kind of worldly science, everything is in my money, everything is in women, everything is in, you know, music, everything is in drugs. Any of those things, they don't make you happy. And so in order for you to try and find that true love in your heart, that true feeling, that emotion in your heart that connects you to true happiness, you have to reach the Creator somehow.
Yeah.
And like I said before, the example of the Prophet gives us that connection.
Yeah.
When you follow it with the right intentions,
Mhm.
you're going to get that connection, and you're going to feel an increase in happiness in your life.
So,
And that's not to say that you're not going to get tested, because the people that
yeah.
have the most level of love, they get tested the most.
Yeah.
Like the prophets, they were tested more than anybody else.
Yeah.
But the reason why they passed all the tests is because they knew that this is all from Allah,
So,
you know?
yeah.
And people will say, well, you know, Muslims, they look like they don't have anything, you know? Like, for example, people in Palestine or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, they look like they don't have anything at all.
Right. And I guess we have to define what the thing is, right? What's the thing?
Yeah, so like for example, there's a lecture by one American guy, his name's Yusha Evans.
Yeah.
He talks about what was it? He talks about basically that someone told him, why would we follow you Muslims? You always get your behinds thrown in jail or kicked behind, you know, and you're always the most hated of all people. Why would we follow you? And he says that basically we have this happiness in our hearts, like I said before about the statement of the Salaf,
So,
that if you knew it, you would just be fighting us to get it, you know?
yeah.
And that's basically the same thing he said, is that, you know, I know there's a day that's coming that we're all going to be accounted for what we did.
Yeah.
And whatever you do to me, I'm going to get it back on that day, you know? I'm going to get back my happiness on that day.
Yeah.
So I know that if I disobey Allah and I don't do things in a way that pleases Him,
Overstepping the boundaries.
and I don't repent from that, and I
Yeah.
don't get His mercy on that day,
Mhm.
I'm going to be in trouble just like you. So that's why I have to follow it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And
you know,
it comes back to not following the desires as well.
yeah,
Because if you're submitting to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you gotta put your desires, we're not letting go of our desires, we're letting go of our evil desires.
yeah, that's another point, because
Yeah.
you can have good desires in Islam.
So
You can have a
the
wife,
desire to get married.
you
Yeah.
can have kids, you can
Right.
have a good house,
Right.
you know, a nice car.
Right. As long as it's within the boundaries.
As long as you don't put those things above Allah, it's fine, you know.
Mhm.
And I mean, everything that in Islam has a haram
Yeah.
like for example wine,
Yeah.
there's an alternative for it that is halal. Like for example wine, you have grape juice, you know. I mean, it's not going to make you drunk,
Yeah.
but it's still pleasurable, you know. So everything that's haram has a equivalent that's halal that we can use instead.
Right.
So having a party where your friends come over and you drink coffee, you talk, you know, maybe watch a basketball game or something, you can do that, you know.
Yeah.
But where you get into haram in those gatherings, that's where we draw the line, you know. And especially if it involves bid'ah or shirk, you know.
Yeah.
So
Alhamdulillah. So I wanted to ask you, what are you most passionate about?
to me, the thing that drives me the most out of anything,
Yeah.
hands down, has to be knowing who Allah is.
Okay.
You know, so the more I learn about His names and His attributes and how to worship Him through fiqh and things like that,
Yeah.
it increases me in love for this religion, and for everything around me is a sign that this is a true religion, you know. And I mean,
Yeah.
whenever I read the Qur'an, it's like I see those things in front of me.
Yeah.
Everything that happens, I see those things happening, and I'm like, this is just, it's amazing.
That's the miracle. Yeah. It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with you right now talking to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the thing about the Quran that is totally amazing, if you read it over and over and over, the more you understand about it, the more you see it in the world around you, you know?
Yeah.
And it's impossible to find a contradiction in it, you know? And knowing Allah's names knowing his attributes,
Yeah.
knowing how to worship him according to the way of the Prophet, it gives you that happiness that nothing can, you know. And you know, if I learn al-Khaliq and I know the meaning, I know that there's only that one creator who can create from nothing. And I learn that he has a face, but I can't describe it. And I'm like, you know, this face has got to be something that is beyond any imagination, beyond whatever anybody's seen. You know, and that gives me a good feeling in my heart. And so I just want to learn more and more and more, you know. And
why? I know you've explained a little bit. I want to dig a little bit deeper into the why, because
because of this example of the Sahaba, basically, you know, they were such a people that whatever they did, it was successful. I mean, not saying every time they did something that they didn't lose sometimes. Like, for example, they had battles and they lost sometimes.
Yeah.
But the way that they followed this command, it was because of that tawheed, you know?
Yeah.
Whatever the Prophet ﷺ forbade, they left it right away.
Yeah.
Whatever he commanded, they did extra so much it was like they were going the extra mile on everything,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So, like, for example, there's a hadith about Zainab, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, that she used to pray so much that she would need a rope to hold on because she would get tired. And we know that's not the correct way of praying, because if you get tired, you're supposed to stop.
Yeah.
But she had that zeal, and that zeal was
She
because
couldn't
of
just
her
hold herself.
tawheed, you know?
Subhanallah.
And, you know, stories of the Salaf that, you know,
Yeah.
they didn't want to go to sleep at night. They just kept pouring water on their eyes so they wouldn't fall asleep. And I know that I'm not like that, you know.
Yeah.
I know that most people aren't like that nowadays, but that was the example for me. Is their stories are so inspirational that I'm like, I have to learn the same thing they learned for 13 years, so I can become like them. You know.
One of the questions that keeps coming back in my head, in line with what you mentioned, is the Sahaba. There's individuals where they did so much,
Yeah.
but they, for some reason, still felt insignificant.
Yeah, and that goes along with being humble. I mean, to have humility is a quality of the prophets, and it's a quality of the righteous people from the beginning. You know, I mean, that's a quality that you worship a lot through.
Yeah.
You know, so that was one of the examples of the Sahaba, especially, that they would feel like whatever I do, it's not enough. You know, and also, for example, how can we thank Allah for this breath that comes in and out of our lungs?
Yeah.
How can we be truly thankful for that? And how can we thank Him for the food that we get? How can we thank Him for the sleep we have, and for the wives that we get, and for the kids that we get? You just can never be thankful enough. And no matter how much you pray, there's always going to be that feeling, if you're humble and then you're not arrogant about it,
Yeah.
that I'm not good enough. And I don't know if what I'm doing is going to be accepted or not.
Yeah.
So that was their main concern, is they prayed so much, but they're like, I'm not sure if it's going to be accepted or not.
So,
And also they have this fear in their hearts, am I a munafiq? You know, so every mu'min, every person who truly believes is going to think, you know, somehow in their hearts, am I a munafiq? You know, because
it's interesting because
you don't know to the level of your sincerity in your heart. Allah knows that, you know.
Absolutely.
So you could be the most sincere of all people, but you're not going to feel it. You're going to be like, I don't know if I'm really sincere or not.
Yeah.
You know. And even Umar Ridwanullah who came to Hudayfa, who was the keeper of the secrets of the Prophet ﷺ, and he asked him, am I munafiq? You know. And he knew that he's going to be in Jannah.
Yeah. This was after he was told he's going to be in Jannah?
Yeah. Yeah, he knows he's going to be in Jannah. So he came to Hudayfa and asked him, am I on that list that the Prophet ﷺ gave you? And he said, I'll only tell you because, you know, I think he was thinking that, you know you're not going to be a munafiq. Maybe you could be at that time, you know, but you're never going to be a munafiq when you die, because you're guaranteed paradise. But I'm not saying that Umar is munafiq. I'm just saying that he had that feeling in his heart that, do I have this nifaq? He probably knew for sure 100% that my belief is 100% sound.
Yeah.
But he had that idea that are my actions, do they have nifaq in them? You know.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to say anything that offends anybody about Umar. So I hope that what I just said is not taken out of context and misconstrued.
Yeah.
But Umar was not a munafiq. He was 100% mu'min all his life. I mean, after accepting Islam.
Yeah.
But he would still have that fear in his heart that maybe there's some nifaq in me. You know, and the munafiq on the other hand will feel like proud of himself.
Yeah.
He'll have that arrogance in his heart that
Like
I'm not going to submit. I'm not going to submit to whatever Allah and His Messenger say. You know.
Yeah.
And the non-Muslims also have that in a lot of ways. I'm not saying that they can't be humble, but there's a point where they say, I'm not going to follow that.
Yeah.
So that's why they're called non-Muslim kuffar. You know,
Yeah.
It's because the kafara, it's a root word from Islam, from Arabic.
Yeah.
That basically it was used in a linguistic sense where you put the seed in the earth like a farmer and then cover it over. So they know in their hearts that Allah is the creator.
Yeah.
That seed of the knowledge is still there, but they cover it over. You know, so that arrogance is there, even if they're not. So they could be humble people in an outward sense, and they could be humble people even in an inward sense a little bit, but they're rejecting something. They're covering it over.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's why they don't want to accept Islam. Yeah.
SubhanAllah. So what belief?
Yeah.
What is belief?
So belief, a lot of people will say the saying in English, seeing is believing, but that's not believing.
Yeah.
Seeing is not believing. If Allah showed himself on TV, there's no reason to believe anymore. You know it's there, you know? Belief is unseen,
Right.
you know? So in order for you to have proof that that unseen is true, you have to have a sign, you know?
Yeah.
So that's why the prophets had miracles, you know? And people took it too far and worshipped them, or they, didn't believe in what they saw in front of their own eyes.
Yeah.
But these signs point to a creator, not to those prophets being powerful.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Jesus, when he brought the dead back to life, it wasn't from his own power.
Yeah.
It was from Allah's power, because Jesus can't do that by himself.
Right.
And when Ibrahim ﷺ was put in the fire and it didn't burn him, that was a sign from Allah. It wasn't Ibrahim that said, to the fire, be cool for me.
Yeah.
And when the Prophet came with the Isra wal Mi'raj, and he came with splitting the moon, and he came with the Qur'an, which is a living miracle that no one can prove that there's ever been a change to it. Mm-hmm. These types of things prove the power of Allah. And the fact that there's no contradiction in the Qur'an, and that Allah's preserved it from 1400 years ago till now, and that is continuing to be preserved by little kids that are like 4 years old know the whole thing, and 7 years old, 10 years old, they know the whole thing.
Yeah.
And this proves that there's some kind of miraculous thing about that can't be replicated in any other thing,
Yeah.
And I forgot what the question is now. Yeah, but I mean,
Alhamdulillah. It was mainly about Iman, but I think sometimes you're passionately talking about something, it leads you to something else, which is okay, right? There's it's never a right or wrong thing, but
so the proof, it was about the proof.
It was belief, right?
Yeah, so belief. Okay. Yeah. So the proof, if you can find a contradiction in the Quran, then that's something we'll all say we'll leave Islam, But there's no contradiction in it.
Right.
And
there's perceived contradiction.
So that's a different thing. In the Quran, it mentions that some people, they find these kind of verses in the Quran that could be a little bit vague on face value, and they take those and run with them.
Right.
So those are called mutashabihat. Mutashabihat are those things that have like maybe a little bit of doubt in them, But the scholars know the the actual ruling about those mutashabihat.
Yeah.
So there's a few people who know the exact ruling on those.
Yeah.
You know, but there's other verses in the Quran which are muhkam. Muhkam is like there's no doubt. It's like everybody would know that's true. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, for example, that the stars they fall, you know, or that the sun comes out and goes down.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that, you know.
Right.
But for example, I'm trying to think of something that would be mutashabih. I don't know example for right now. But the thing about it is there are verses that are mutashabihat.
Yeah.
Okay, and some people will find those and take it and say that means the whole religion is wrong. So, in the Quran it says, "Fas'alu ahla dhikri in kuntum la ta'lamun."
Yeah.
Ask the people of knowledge if you don't know.
Yeah.
And this applies to other than the Quran and the Quran. So, for example, when your car breaks, you're not going to just start digging in there and pulling stuff out. You're going to ask a mechanic to look at it.
Yeah.
You know. So when you have a doubt about the Quran, you have to go to a scholar, a qualified scholar. So when you find those mutashabihat, you have to ask a scholar, and then when he explains it, you'll know.
Yeah.
And you get to a point in your Islam when you've been in it long enough that you realize that, you know, I had this kind of misconceived notion at one point,
Right.
but it was answered later. So I have to be patient with those type of things.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing you.
Yeah, don't let it become a doubt where you're like, well, now I have to
There's
leave
a lot
Islam.
of that.
Because it's like, there's this doubt, but it's just lingering in my heart, and I'm like, well, Islam has to be not true at one point. But the people who stay with it long enough and continue doing it, they realize that whatever that misconceived notion was, there's going to be an answer later.
Yeah, eventually you'll get the answer, but are you patient in the journey to get that answer?
Are you steadfast?
Right.
You know, and are you going to be one of those people who lets a doubt rule your heart?
Yeah.
Or are you going to be one of those people who has patience with Allah's decrees?
Right. Or are you too ashamed or too arrogant to ask the scholars and the people who know?
That's another problem. The problem is people don't respect scholars nowadays. You know, but. There's no, what I think the original point was about the Quran being a sign. So I know that the non-Muslims and the munafiqun and people like that, they don't see any signs in it, but there are signs in it even if they don't like it.
Yeah.
So the thing about it is the true believer will definitely take it as a sign. And it says that in the Quran, that the people who are reminded by it are the people that have true iman. The people who don't find a reminder in it, they're going to find some way to reject it. Even if it's like right in their face that this is truth, they're going to find a way to reject it anyway. Yeah,
because of what's inside their heart.
Yeah, because they're covering over those spark in their heart. You know, like I said about the verb kafara. And you know, the belief, if you saw it right in front of your eyes every time, it wouldn't be true belief. That's why we have to have a sign that shows us Allah. You know, because Allah's not going to come down to the earth and show us His face.
Right.
He's going to show us things through signs. And the system, the organization that He created, it should prove to most people that there's a Creator who wants to get worship from us. You know, and you know, I mean, the things that He sends, like the punishments. That happened to Fir'aun and all those tyrants, you know, and the people. Those were signs for them, but we don't really have those nowadays because Allah, I mean, He does send it sometimes, but it's not as obvious as it was for them. Allah hasn't chosen to do that for us, for this nation, really.
Because we have the Quran, right?
Yeah, and for other nations, that was the main thing. Like people of Ad and Thamud, they're like, you know, we don't believe in what you're saying, so bring us the punishment right now. We want this punishment right now if you're truthful. And then they got to the point where they did such horrible transgressions against their prophets and their followers and the signs that Allah sent, like the Naqatullah, the she-camel of Allah, they killed it, you know. So then Allah sent the punishment right in this world. But that hasn't happened in this ummah. And the wisdom behind that, Allah knows. But Allah can send the punishment if He wants to, but we haven't received it the way they did. And that's out of the mercy of Allah, you know, because if Allah were to say right now that there's not going to be any more believers, so everybody gets on the ship and goes in the ocean, you know, like he did with Nuh alayhi salam.
Yeah.
Then there would be no choice. You know, you would have to either accept Islam at that point
Or suffer the consequences
or just
immediately.
be punished.
Yeah.
But Allah, out of His mercy right now, is allowing people that rope to hang themselves with in some cases, you know, or that He's giving them time to repent.
Yeah.
I know for me, during my Jahiliyyah, those 11 years where I spent just wasted, you know.
Yeah.
If I had been told directly that you either accept Islam or you're going to be in the fire, I wouldn't have accepted it.
Right.
Because I had that problem in my heart that I just want to keep
desire,
doing these desires,
yeah,
you know. And it took me those 11 years and the little time that I spent studying Islam to change, because I, in reality, was not a happy person, you know.
Yeah.
And I was very lonely. I was very depressed, you know, and I had a lot of problems with people around me, not my family, but people outside of my family.
Yeah.
And I had problems with work. I had problems with, you know, everything basically. And it wasn't only because of the problems; it was also because of the way that it affected me in my heart. And I just couldn't figure out how to get happiness no matter what I tried. And eventually, once I learned about Islam, then I felt that happiness right away. And that's why I accepted it, like, without even knowing what it was, basically, you know.
What year?
It was 1999.
99, mashallah.
Yeah.
So about nearly going on 20 years now.
Yeah, yeah, almost 20 years now.
19 now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Subhanallah.
Yeah.
Mashallah.
Yeah. So I'm still learning, and, you know, I mean, it's a journey. I mean, like, for example, Ahmed ibn Hanbal, he was one of our great scholars in the past. He said that the ink pot is basically the thing that you put the pen in and you dip it in, you write with. Ink pot to the grave. So you learn and you learn and you learn until you die. So I'm still learning. I'm not a scholar. I'm not even a student of knowledge. I'm just, you know, kind of a man that wants to know as much as possible, but doesn't get the chance to read it that as much as I want to, you know. But I'm still reading. I'm still learning, and every day I'm trying to learn something new about Islam.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
I think some of the things that I've realized is just the thing about the mutashabihat, and initially you'll get tested through it, and then eventually you'll realize the truth. One of it for me was as I was reading the Qur'an more, not just reading it just to memorize and whatnot, but reading it to understand it so I could, you know, implement it into my life.
Yeah.
One of the things that kind of I got stuck on was, you know how we have this perceived notion that men and women are created equal, right? Mm-hmm. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions when the inheritance are divided, that the men gets one and the women get half. Yeah. For a little while I just lost it. I was like, what? Yeah. You know, I thought you know what I mean? I thought you said it was they're, you know what I mean, they're equal. Yeah. And then it just that kept going, and I'm like, no, this is not right. So the thing about it is, you know, that may seem unjust to some people. Yeah. But the woman is getting her spending from her husband as well, you know. So a lot of times, and I think that was the realization when I realized that. I'm like, it makes sense. Yeah. Right. So I mean, it may not be this way completely today, but a lot of times in the past, what will happen is the man would be the only one who works. Right. So the woman would be the one staying home, and, you know, raising the kids and taking care of the house and things like that. Yeah. And that was a norm. But nowadays we have women going out to work and men going to work. Yeah. So it's kind of it becomes a problem for people who are into those mutashabihat that, you know, I'm working as much as my husband, so why shouldn't I get the same thing? And but it comes back to the legislated law of who's responsible financially. And that's not a subject I've really studied that much, so I can't really say exactly what we would say to the women nowadays. Yeah. But there is an answer to it. If we ask the scholars, there will be an answer to it, you know. Right. And the mutashabihat, like, I'm trying
trying to think of an example other than that. Just can't think of anything right now.
Yeah.
But there will be an answer if you have patience. And don't let any kind of thing come into your heart that becomes a doubt that makes you give up on Islam.
Yeah.
Make those kind of things research projects for yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
whatever problem you have with the legislation, make that a research project for you to find out. So ask the scholars and look into the books of hadith and tafsir and things like that, and look into the websites that are beneficial and find the answer.
Yeah.
You know, through those things, and you'll find it.
Yeah.
If Allah wills it, you'll find it. And the thing about it, for example, there's a story in the Sirah as well about Surah Al-Fath Surah.
Yeah.
It's basically revealed about the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, and which is a time where they were on their way to make Umrah.
Mm.
Prophet ﷺ had a dream that I'm going to make Umrah with my companions.
Yeah.
So they went and they tried to fulfill the dream. And they're on their way to Mecca to make Umrah.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't take any weapons with them because they were not intending to fight the Quraysh, and they were in their stronghold, Mecca.
Yeah.
But they sent one person ahead to go see what the Quraysh are doing because they're afraid, maybe they're going to fight us.
Yeah.
And they found out that they're dressed for war. And so basically, the Prophet was like, well, if they're going to fight us, we're going to fight,
Mm.
So we'll protect ourselves. And someone else said, I think it was Abu Bakr, he said that maybe it's better that we make some kind of peace agreement between them instead of fighting, because our original intention was to come for Umrah, not to fight.
Right.
So the Prophet took his decision instead. He took Abu Bakr's decision instead of his own first thought. And he said, that, okay, we'll make a treaty.
Mm.
So they sent their emissaries from the Quraysh to the Prophet ﷺ, and they made this treaty. And in the treaty, the first thing the Prophet ﷺ said to Ali is that he was the scribe, write down Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Mm.
And he said, which means that in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most gracious. And they're both from the word Rahma, which means mercy, both of those two names of Allah. But they didn't recognize Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim as names of Allah, the Quraysh, the idol worshippers. So they said that we don't recognize those names, so just say the way that we say Allahumma, which means Oh Allah.
Yeah.
Because they believed in the name of Allah, but they didn't believe in
Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. Yeah.
So he said, scratch that out. He wrote Allahumma instead. And then they said, in the name of Allah, Allah, from the Prophet of Allah. And the emissary said, we don't recognize you as the Prophet of Allah, so take that out. So he took it out. And he said, Muhammad ibn Abdullah instead.
Yeah.
So basically, that was the first two conditions. And after that, it was getting such to the point where the Sahaba are like, how can we accept their conditions? They're so bad for us.
Yeah.
Everything that they're saying is going to be so horrible for us.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we have been making hijrah to Medina, and we've been safe in Medina.
Yeah.
We've been safe from their torture and from whatever they've been doing to us in Mecca.
Yeah.
And now they're saying, whoever comes from our land to your land, you're going to have to send him back. And so the Sahaba were like, how can we send them back? They're coming to get safety from Allah and from us,
Yeah.
But the thing about it is they accepted all the conditions. Umar even questioned the Prophet ﷺ after that, like, how can this be the good way when you're on the truth and we're on the truth? How can we get any benefit from this? And that was something that Umar later on regretted and made a lot of tawbah for. But the Prophet ﷺ just simply told him that Allah told me to do it and there will be a benefit in it. So it seemed like a mutashabi thing at the time, but it ended up being one of the greatest things that happened to Islam. So don't let these type of doubts or any of these type of things spread in your heart till it gets to the point where you're like, I'm either going to accept Islam or not, leave Islam or not practice it.
Yeah.
Don't let it get to be a disease in your heart.
Yeah.
Because there is an answer, and Allah will give you the answer if you ask the right people.
Yeah. Because even the proof that it is mutashabihat is that you have a bad feeling.
Yeah.
And the more you keep on with that, it's not like it's gonna go away.
Yeah, and I mean like for example, the Christian missionaries and the Orientalists, they like to use these type of verses to try and attack Islam.
Yeah.
You know, and they find mutashabihat in hadith, they find mutashabihat in Qur'an
Yeah.
and seerah and all those type of things. But if you truly look for the answer and you have the right intention with Allah,
Mhm.
you will find the answer. And you need to make dua to Allah to help you find the answer. So don't let it be something that makes you give up.
Ridwanullah ta'ala. I think that's, subhanallah, honestly, like for me right now, I think I'm probably 25% into all the questions that I want to ask you.
Oh, okay. I'll try
all
not
of
to
the
go
other. No, but I mean, it's very beneficial. Like, alhamdulillah, I mean, it's a beautiful journey.
Yeah.
Like, one thing I realized in doing these interviews is, I honestly, like, I would rather do this than watch a movie now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
You know?
and I watched the one with you and Idrissa. It was great. I loved it, mashallah.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah,
He's a very good brother, mashallah.
Yeah.
And I hope to connect more with good brothers like that, and that's why I wanted to interview you and learn something from you, bi'idhnillah ta'ala.
Yeah.
And learn more, I should say, not just something, alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
But I'm kind of stuck between continuing, because I know Asr is going to be coming up fairly shortly. And then, you know, just the whole thing. So I think maybe the safe thing to do, inshallah, is to kind of start wrapping it up in the last questions. And maybe we could do a part 2, you know, maybe a couple of weeks or a month or so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permits. And just kind of add on to this this process.
I think we talked a lot about Islam, but we didn't talk about anything else. So
yeah. Well, I guess that indicates the passion, right? That indicates.
And I started with my biography, but ended up talking about Islam instead.
Yeah. I think that's what I wanted to get into, is some of the things that, you know, like you accepting Islam, your childhood, you know, some of the things that you've dealt with your parents, you know, so many things. But I don't know if we could really dive into that.
Maybe a part 2 or something.
Yeah, inshallah. So, there's so much to unpack and take in, but alhamdulillah, I'll start asking, you know, the kind of like the wrap up questions.
Okay, sure.
And then, you know, maybe we can get into figuring out how we can schedule another one, inshallah, in the future.
Sure.
Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So, we've been on this amazing journey. Now I want to learn a couple of, we picked up a couple of the wisdom in all of it, right? And there's some insights where, you know, there's light bulbs moments, and I want to be able to get that in a compact way. As the last few questions is more of a like rapid fire question, so to say.
Okay.
So I want to know, what's improved your life the most, beginning to end, till right now?
Okay, so the main thing that's improved my life more than anything else is making dua. You know, so even if I break my shoelace, I make dua. Even if I get a broken car part, I make dua.
Yeah.
You know, and when I have a decision to make, I make istikhara. So dua, basically, for those people who don't know Arabic, is basically calling to Allah in supplication. So like you would do before you're Muslim or whatever, like you say, oh God, help me, raise your hands.
Yeah.
This is something directly to Allah in Islam, but this for me is the most important thing I can do.
Yeah.
And the 5 prayers, those are a form of dua. So the dua is the most important thing in my life out of anything else. Whenever I have a problem, I make dua. And whenever I can't get over a challenge, I make dua. That's like the most, 100%, that's the most important thing for me.
Alhamdulillah.
That's helped me.
And what's the most pleasurable time of your life?
In terms of dunya or akhirah stuff?
Both or either one.
Okay, so as far as, you know, Islamic things, it was definitely when I accepted Islam. You know, and also.
And you felt it then.
Yeah, and also going on Hajj, that was something amazing for me.
MashaAllah.
And another one would be going to Yemen to learn Arabic. That was, for me, the most high iman I ever had in my life. As far as dunyawi things, the things that the greatest ni'mah from Allah for me are my kids and my wife.
Subhanallah.
You know, so
MashaAllah.
alhamdulillah,
Allah yazid wa barik.
you know, I mean, I have awesome kids,
Yeah.
you know, and mashallah, they're just like little lights for me. I don't always treat them exactly the way they should be treated, but
Yeah.
I love them more than anything, and I love my wife more than anything, so,
MashaAllah.
you know,
MashaAllah.
yeah.
And Allah bless you guys and increase
Ameen.
the love and everything, mashallah. What's the most painful time of your life?
I don't know if it's the most painful time of my life, but one of the things that definitely affected me, like, it just immediately comes to my mind is when my brother died. He didn't die of natural causes. He decided to kill himself. So to me, that was like, I had no idea that he was having a problem. And even though he's not a Muslim and he never accepted Islam, I still had this depression in my heart that, how could he do that, you know? And it just immediately struck me as like just such a tragedy, you know, that this person that I grew up with and cared about, even we didn't get along as well as we should have, but he decided to take his life and give up. And that to me was like, how could you give up on this life? You know, it's like, I've thought about suicide every once in a while, but I never got to the point where I was like, I'm going to actually do it, you know?
Yeah.
It just was a thought that passed my mind and left, you know, and I'm like, to me, that's like giving up,
Yeah.
you know? I
Yeah.
mean, there has to be, in Islam, we have this concept of mercy from Allah,
Yeah.
that once you get into a hardship and a hard time in your life, there's going to be two reliefs that outweigh that one hardship. That's in the Qur'an. So if you wait it out and be patient, you're going to get over it. But for me, when he did that, it was like he just gave up, and I'm like, that was just so sad and tragic, you know. And before Islam, I mean, I talked about the depression and the loneliness that I felt,
Yeah.
and that for me was the other hardship in my life.
Subhanallah.
Yeah.
You know, I actually didn't know that, and I think that's the beauty of connecting with you and learning about that. You know, and
Yeah.
what would you say to someone who's struggling with suicidal thoughts? Like, what is your message?
So the thing about it is, suicidal thoughts are from shaitan, you know?
Yeah.
And
Subhanallah. First most important thing.
Even if you don't believe in Allah, even if you're not a Muslim,
Yeah.
then don't give up, you know, because there will be a better thing after that eventually.
Yeah.
And even if you're not a Muslim, then I would say my main advice is still ask God to help you. Ask Him to help you, and you will be helped. You know, and I mean, you may not be on the same level with Allah as the one who accepts all of His commands, but He will help you if you ask Him directly. You know, and so if you're a non-Muslim and you have a major problem or even a small problem, ask Him for help and be patient. The most important thing is to be patient and to not give up on anything. Even if you're doing things that are against Islam and you're not a Muslim, but you have some kind of challenge that you want to pass,
Yeah.
don't give up. Keep trying. And that's the same advice I give to Muslims. Keep trying and don't give up. You know?
I think those are very key, mashallah.
And also, any Muslim that feels that way, seek refuge from the shaitan immediately, because this is a whisper from him. He's trying to get you to go to Jahannam with him.
Permanently.
Yeah, and don't give up, because you know there's going to be a day of judgment if you're a Muslim.
Yeah.
You know that Allah is going to ask you, why did you do this?
Right.
And you know that Allah doesn't like that. I mean, it's obvious from the fitrah that this is something Allah doesn't like.
Right.
And so, if you feel there's no hope, then you find the hope in Allah and your patience and not giving up. That's the main advice I have for people that feel like there's no hope.
Yeah.
There is a hope. You just can't give it up, you know.
Jazakallah. It's important, like, because, you know, as I'm doing this work, like, it's a huge journey behind the scenes, because people contact me and they let me know, you know, I'm on top of this cliff.
Yeah.
Or I thought about killing myself, and I'm like, Subhanallah, and I never, for the longest, I didn't believe Muslims were suicidal. You know?
It can happen to anybody. Everybody's human.
It's especially
human too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. It's Subhanallah, but it's like, from where I grew up, that's like, it's far. I guess maybe that had to do with me being a child, right? I didn't know a lot of these things that I know now.
Yeah.
But it's important because the message that you're giving people is, you know, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness or to help you.
Yeah, and anytime you have a problem, he's always there to hear.
Yeah.
He's always there to answer.
Very important.
So don't give up and try.
And don't give up is another one.
And you know, the Mormons, we live in a Mormon country right now.
Yeah.
I mean, not country, but
State.
Mormon state.
Yeah.
So their message is always just try and make supplication about our book. I would say that let's have this challenge as well for the non-Muslims to give it a try. Ask Allah for help and see what happens.
Subhanallah.
You know?
Yeah.
You can try to find out about their book through him or through Jesus or whatever you worship.
Yeah.
But try this one time. Just try
See how it
one
feels.
time in your life
Yeah.
to ask Allah for help
Yeah.
and see what happens.
Subhanallah. That's an amazing pre-challenge.
Yeah. and you asked me about a challenge as well. I don't know if you want to get to that
Just
now.
a few seconds.
Okay,
inshallah.
sure.
I guess the other questions is, what's the most important lesson you've ever learned in your life?
The most important lesson
Yeah.
ever
Or
learned in
something
my life.
close. What's a principle that you use a lot, in other words?
So the thing that comes to mind, and it's one of those words from the Prophet ﷺ, that the Sahaba asked him, let me ask you something that I don't have to ask anybody else after you about that thing.
Yeah.
So he asked him, what is that one thing that I can ask you that nobody else after you will give me a better advice about? So he said to him in Arabic, قُلْ آمَنْتُ بِاللَّهِ ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ, which means say, I believe in Allah, and then after that be upright. Follow the religion, basically. You know, so this is a comprehensive word that it just contains all the advice you need in it.
Right.
You know, so say I believe, say the shahada, and believe it in your heart, and have that tawheed and that iman, and follow it up with action. You know, and so iman consists of statement and action.
Yeah.
So if you say it, then do it too. You know, don't just say I believe and then not do anything about it. Say I believe, and then do your 5 prayers, do your Ramadan, do your Hajj, you know, and do the nawafil, do the extra deeds, do the dhikr, do the reading, the knowledge seeking, all that kind of stuff. Do all that, you know. Yeah.
Inshallah, it's important. And the last 3 questions is going to be the final ones.
Okay.
You have an opportunity to share 3 nasiha with the people that you love the most.
Okay.
And you know, our ummah in the world, as your final message, as if you know, this is like the last thing that you could ever say in life. Let's so to say, right? What would it be? What would you tell us? What would you tell your loved ones, your friends, and the ummah in the whole world? What would be your 3 nasihas for us?
So if it was really my departing time and I knew it, then I would tell them the most important thing out of all life is to stick to this deen. You know, and the second one would be that treat others the way you want to be treated.
Subhanallah.
Even if they're not part of your religion, treat them the way you want to be treated.
Okay.
That was an advice of the Prophet as well. So the third one, that's a very hard question. I would say that seek knowledge and be curious about what Allah wants from you. Let that curiosity drive you to constantly keep learning more about what He wants from people in this life. And don't let that ever stop. And as part of that, don't waste your time. you know, because you have a very short time before you meet him.
Subhanallah.
Don't let it be that you spent most of it in israf, which is wasting. You know, don't let that time be on the PlayStation doing Call of War or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And don't let that time be treating people in a bad way. And don't let that time be a regret for you. Because on the day of judgment, you're going to be asked about everything you did. Not just what you did at work, not just what you did in your 5 prayers.
Yeah.
Everything you did will be asked about. So don't let it be wasted. You know, don't let yourself meet Allah and say, I'm sorry, Allah, I didn't have time to pray to you. I'm sorry I didn't have time to fast in Ramadan. I didn't make a Hajj because I was too busy going on vacation every single place in the world. Don't let that be a regret. Find a way to make everything you do beneficial and for Allah. And we talked about that before one time in the masjid. We were talking about how you can make your regular everyday activities into a form of worship.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a thing called ihtisab in Arabic, which means that you expect reward. So, let your daily chores be for Allah. Like, for example, when you clean the dishes, let that be for some form of pleasing Allah. You know, that if I do this, my family will be pleased and we'll have more harmony in the house, and that will lead to a better way of sharing the deen together without being mad at each other. So it's like, well, we don't even want to talk to each other. You know, so find a way to make those, like cleaning up the dishes, into a form of worship. You know, if you learn martial arts or running, learn it to protect yourself and to protect the Muslims. You know, if you learn how to run and how to swim, make it a form of worship by saying that this will help my body be able to perform my prayers, or this will help my, you know, if I won't be out of shape, then I'll be able to perform more deeds for Allah. You know, so that, find a way to make those daily chores and daily things into a form of worship for Allah. And that, through that, you'll find a way to increase your Ameen in everything you do. You know, and if you have that intention in your heart, it will be hard for you to disobey Allah. Yeah.
Jazakallah khair. It's amazing. 3 nasihas. If I remember correctly, it's stick to the deen. The second one was, I remember.
I don't remember either.
It's good to summarize. I think it was along the lines of, man, it slipped my mind. I had it. Okay, the third one is seek knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Seek knowledge, and the second one you guys know, so you guys better remind us.
So we can watch it again and be reminded.
Inshallah. So the last few questions, and is, and I know that we're running a little bit short on time, is that what's the best way people can contact you, either to just ask you a question or some sort of opportunity in the future?
So, I don't know if I feel comfortable about giving contact information on the web, but
I mean, even an email, just or whatever. If you don't feel comfortable,
I want to give my email, but they can find Abu Zubayr on Facebook.
Okay.
And send me a message. I don't know if I'll look at it, because I really don't look at Messenger that much.
Yeah.
Even especially if it's not one of my contacts. But if they really truly want to find me,
they can
that's
the
for
best
Abu
way for
Zubayr on
it.
Facebook, which is ABUZUBAYR.
Space in between.
A space in between,
Inshallah.
And my picture, I think, is what's my picture? Some kind of stars or something. Some picture of stars.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So before I ask you the last question,
Uh-huh.
actually, the last question followed by a challenge, right?
Okay, sure.
Inshallah. So I wish I had enough time to truly acknowledge you and truly give it its proper due, but because of the time pressure, inshallah, I'll try to make it short and sweet.
Okay.
I want to, and I, the challenge that I've had is you don't want to praise people more than it's due.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the gratitude, when you thank the people and acknowledge the people, is similar to thanking and acknowledging Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, because of the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you. I acknowledge you and I thank you for being an example of following the Qur'an and the Sunnah.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know if I'm really that example, but
Yeah.
people don't see the things that go on behind closed doors.
Right, and
Sometimes
that's kind of the reality, right?
You do things and you're like, well, I definitely don't want to tell anybody about that one.
Yeah, yeah. But alhamdulillah.
But I try my best.
Alhamdulillah. And that's all that, that's more than we could ask for in terms of our end, right?
Yeah.
And, just seeking knowledge, being an example of seeking knowledge. You're always studying, you're always learning, mashallah.
Yeah.
So I acknowledge and I appreciate you for doing that. And, just taking the time to be a good resource as well. Like every time I ask you any questions, you're always willing to answer them, and you help me a lot.
That's from the good manners, is that if people ask you for nasiha, you should give it to them.
Yeah.
And like, for example, I was reading a book the other day about 10 mannerisms that every Muslim should have, and one of them is when someone talks to you, you shouldn't interrupt them. You should face them completely and give your whole attention to them.
Yeah.
So this is from the good manners of the Prophet and his companions and the scholars and the students of knowledge, is that when someone talks to you, you should give them their full attention. So I try. I'm not perfect about that either.
Jazakallah khair, and appreciate everything that you've done for me and the opportunities that we've had.
Yeah.
As limited as they might have been, but I truly appreciate it, and I hope to kind of expand them. Bi'idhnillah.
I'll accept it for both of us.
Ameen. Jazakallah khair. Last two things.
Okay.
The first one is the last question, and then before we give them the challenge is, this project that I'm still trying to develop.
Sorry, I got cramp.
No problem.
Let me just stand up for a second.
Yeah, you could probably just stand up to kind of finish this off, inshallah.
Okay.
Let me kind of adjust this.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
I think I'm okay now.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Alhamdulillah. So the last question is, I've been building this whole thing, and I'm trying to conceptualize what this vision is, right? And I'm always shifting from thing to thing, but as of right now, what I've realized is we're all trying to maximize an Islamic life, right?
Yeah.
I want to know, what is your vision of an Islamic life?
So, the thing about it is, I'll take the advice of one of the scholars I listened to when I was in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
He said that if you want to change the world, then change yourself first. So change yourself, then spread the message to others. Change yourself, change your family, change your friends, and the more that grows, the more that Islam will flourish. And it's not about having numbers, really.
Yeah.
Because there's so many Muslims in the world, but I would say that a great majority of them don't know how to practice the deen properly, And even they say there's 1.7 billion Muslims in the world, but how many of them do the 5 prayers a day? How many of them fast in Ramadan? How many of them know who Allah is? How many of them have correct iman, things like qadr and the malaika and the unseen, things like that? How many of them really know the correct way of worshiping Allah? And if you look at it, you don't see that example in so many Muslims, and this is why the non-Muslims attack the Muslims for being backwards nowadays.
Yeah.
But the thing about it, for Islam to flourish, make it flourish in your heart first, and then spread the message. If people don't follow you, you spread the message still. You've done your job.
Yeah.
But you have to make it flourish in your heart first and in your house. If you get the Islamic law in your heart, and then in your house, and then in your friends, and then get it in the society at large, then Islam will become the norm. And the Prophet ﷺ did that, his Sahaba did that. We're not saying that the Sahaba were perfect. They had their problems after some time, especially after the Prophet ﷺ died.
Yeah.
But they were the best example. Follow that example, follow the Prophet's example in making it yourself first and then others. And spread the message. Whatever you know for sure, 100% that's correct information, spread it. Even if it's only an ayah, like the Prophet ﷺ said, even if it's just one hadith and you know that, spread it, you know. And let people know about this good message. And it's a good message.
Yeah.
Even if you're not Muslim and you don't like it, it is a good message.
Yeah.
If you took the time to sit down and find out about it
Yeah.
with sincerity, you would know it was a good message, you know. And I think non-Muslims can attest to that in a lot of cases because they see that the person who truly follows the deen has a good manners, has a good honesty, you know, and he's a good person.
Absolutely.
You know, so the person who truly follows the deen, even non-Muslims will be like, that person is a good person, you know.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair. I really appreciate that. So the last thing would be the challenge. So I think you had a really good challenge that I was excited about.
Yeah, so my challenge to all the Muslims in particular, and even to non-Muslims, even if you're listening and you find it, even if you thought I was boring, even if you thought that the questions were wrong or whatever you didn't like, my challenge is to go to bed, before you go to bed, take the time to think about what you personally did that day that you can find some regret in, and ask Allah to forgive that. Even if you don't, worship Allah the way Muslims do, ask Him to forgive you for that. And try and leave that day without any scars on your heart, without any blackness or clouds on your heart. Try and leave that day behind where you've apologized to the people you wronged and also to Allah for whatever you may have done against Him or His creation, you know. So that's my challenge. And also another challenge we mentioned before, to the non-Muslims, ask Allah for one thing. Ask Him to give you one thing. Even if you don't think He can give it to you, ask Him for one thing.
Subhanallah.
Make some small thing a request to Allah, or some big thing, whatever you want, because He can give small and big. He's in control of everything. Ask Him and see what happens. If you're a Muslim, make dua more often and ask Allah more often. Make that your challenge, that whenever you break a shoelace, ask Him to give you a new one. Whenever you have a fight between your parents or your loved ones, ask Him to fix it for you. And so make that your new challenge.
Jazakallah khair. So that is the dual challenge for the Muslims and non-Muslims who want to participate. Make sure that you go to bed with an empty slate in your heart, and that's an amazing challenge, mashallah. And the second part of it is ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what you want, particularly for the non-Muslims as well as the Muslims, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And that is what concludes it. I really appreciate it. I'll be wrapping up, but I just want to say Jazakallah khair, Abu Zubayr, for the wonderful opportunity to sit with you.
And I think it's awesome that you're doing this kind of work. And may Allah increase you in barakah for it.
Ameen.
And may Allah guide us all to what He loves.
Jazakallah khair. Ameen. Jazakallah khair. So that's the final. I'm gonna summarize and conclude here. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Jazakumullahu khair, Islamic Life Maximizers, for tuning in to another episode of Maximized Islamic Life TV, your source to Islamically maximize every single area of your life in this dunya and in the akhirah for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'm your host and life maximizer, Hussein Mohamud, checking out with my brother Abu Zubayr by saying, never ever give up on maximizing every single area of your life in this dunya and in the akhirah for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Now I can drink.